Okay, so we're on our last video for animal nutrition, chapter 41, and here we're going to be talking about the evolutionary adaptations of vertebrate digestion. We're through the hardest stuff, so that's good. All right, so in animals, there are lots of different adaptations that are associated with nutrition or the different animals' diets. The first one we're going to talk about is dentition, or the teeth of the different types of animals. If we're talking specifically about mammals, we can sort of categorize the different types of teeth or dentition that are involved in feeding by the groups of animals based on what they eat. So carnivores, for example, they eat mostly meat, as we talked about in one of the first PowerPoints for chapter 41. So carnivores typically have large canines, which are these teeth right here. They use those to pierce their prey, and often they use those in killing the prey. They also use those to shear or cut meat, and so those are really particularly good for tearing meat, and that's why carnivores have them and herbivores, for example, do not. Herbivores tend to have broad, flat teeth. They're missing canines. They don't have any canines at all. They have these broad, flat teeth back here, which are good for grinding plants and breaking up the cell walls of plants. Carnivores have molars back here, which are similarly shaped, but herbivores just have a lot more of them. They're much more effective at cutting up vegetation. And I don't have any text about omnivores, but omnivores who eat a variety of foods tend to have more different types of teeth or a greater variety in dentition. So we have these incisors right here, which also herbivores and carnivores have. Those are for sort of grasping food or biting food. We also have canines, which are good for tearing meat, and then these premolars and molars are good for grinding up plants. So we have teeth that sort of help us with eating plants and animals. And rodents, though, we have an image here for rodents. Rodents have extremely long incisors, which help them gnaw wood or trees or vegetation. So they have special dentition associated with that. Most non-mammalian vertebrates have, I'm doing a class, you're going to have to come back. Most non-mammalian vertebrates have less specialized teeth, so all their teeth kind of look the same, but there are some exceptions. So here's an exception right here. We have, this is a venomous snake from Thailand, and you can see they've got super long fangs. So that's an adaptation in some snakes that you'll see. But most non-mammalian vertebrates, their dentition is much more simple than the mammals, which are up here. My daughter's a little bit freaked out that she's going to be in this lecture, but that's the way it goes. Okay, so some additional adaptations for mammals or for animals besides dentition, which may differ depending on what the organisms are eating, might be involved in the length of the alimentary canal or the digestive tract. Move this down here. There we go. Okay, so for example, carnivores can have large expandable stomachs. So especially carnivores that eat a lot at once and then they wait a while before they eat again. So like large cats have these stomachs that can expand and they look pretty uncomfortable. Here you see a tiger. You can see its belly is really full. This tiger probably just ate Carol Baskin's husband. Actually was going to show you a picture of a lion because there's a lot more pictures of lions with these extended stomachs, but I wanted to make the Tiger King joke there. So That's why you get a picture of a tiger that doesn't really have a super extended stomach, but you know what I'm talking about. So additionally, the length of the alimentary canal is actually pretty relevant, and you see this trend pretty often when you're comparing digestive tracts of carnivores to the digestive tracts of herbivores or omnivores. So if you want to compare, I think this is a wolf or a coyote or something, and here's the digestive tract of the carnivore. It's not short, okay? It's still pretty long, but when you compare that to the digestive tract of an herbivore like a koala, you can see that most every part is longer. Look at how long the cecum is. You guys remember what the cecum is for? That is for helping digest plant material. So the cecum in this koala is really, really long. And the colon, the large intestine, is much longer as well. The small intestine is actually a little bit shorter, but overall, the herbivore digestive tract is much longer than the carnivore digestive tract. There's definitely going to be some variation between the different species, but that's the general trend. Okay, additional adaptations associated with digestion in animals include mutualistic adaptations with the microbiome or with bacteria in our gut. First, we're going to start out with the microbiome in humans. The microbiome is a collection of all the microorganisms that live on the body, and we have different microbiomes in different parts of our body. So there's a microbiome associated with our skin, there's a microbiome associated with our respiratory tract, there's a microbiome associated with our digestive tract, etc. Different bacteria, different microorganisms in all these different places, and all of them have different functions. So interestingly, well, this is sort of a brand new area of study. It's only really been explored in a major way in the past 10 or so years. And we know that there are differences in the microbiome that are associated with diet. So what you eat can affect your microbiome. It can affect your weight. So sometimes people can have the same diet, they can eat the same stuff, but their microbiome might differ for other reasons, and it correlates with weight. Also can correlate with disease, and it can correlate with age. So there's all sorts of different factors that can go either be affected by the microbiome or that can affect the microbiome, and we're not really sure about what the relationship is yet for a lot of these. We just know that there's correlations between microbiome, the makeup of the bacteria in your microbiome, and all of these different components of human health, which is really cool, and there's a lot more to study there. A lot of research going on about it. But there are some things we know about our microbiome. We know that we have some mutualistic relationships between our bodies and our microbiome. For example, and some of these we've already mentioned, some of the bacteria in our gut can produce vitamins, which we need to have our to complete our nutrition. Okay, so they produce vitamins for us that we don't have to get from our food. Other bacteria help us regulate the development of our intestinal epithelium, which is that the skin, the internal skin of our intestines, that in terms of the mucosa, which protect us from digesting our own cells. So bacteria are helpful in development of that. And also they can function in helping us with our immune system. And there's so many other ways that we have mutualistic relationships with bacteria. One really interesting factoid that I don't have in the text here is that if we were to take our body and add up all of the human cells in our body and then add up all of the bacterial cells and other non-human cells that actually make up our body is really only made up of 10% human cells and 90% cells of other organisms like fungi and bacteria, etc. I know that's weird, but that's totally true. we're only 10% human cells. The rest of it is mutualistic relationships with bacteria and other microorganisms. All right, so there's additional mutualistic adaptations that are specific to herbivores. So as we've talked about, herbivores have the added requirement of having to digest plant material, and they have to do a good job at it because that's the only kind of food that they eat. So a lot of herbivores have fermentation chambers where these microorganisms exist that digest the cellulose for them, since their bodies can't do it themselves. So one thing that rabbits and rodents do, you may have thought that rabbits are rodents, but they're actually in a group called lagomorphs. They're closely related to rodents, but they're not rodents. So rabbits and rodents pass food through their alimentary canal twice. So think about how that can work. If you're passing food through your alimentary canal twice, it goes through once and it comes out as what? Yeah, it comes out as poop. And then in order for it to go through twice, they have to eat their poop in order for it to go through a second time. Okay, so the act of eating their own feces is called coprophagy. So they basically release two types of feces. One category of feces they are done with and they don't eat that. And then the other type of feces they eat. And then it goes through a second time and they basically get 2 shots at digesting the food. I know, it's gross, but that's what they do. So if you ever have a pet rabbit and you see it doing that, it's actually normal behavior. So, and it goes through twice, and while they consume it twice, the bacteria get a second shot at digesting that cellulose. Cellulose is really hard to digest, but the bacteria again are helping them. Another organism, these are not mammals at all. They're not even vertebrates. They are invertebrates, but giant tube worms. Tube worms have no digestive system at all, and so all of their digestion is done by their mutualistic bacteria that live within their bodies. So they ingest the food, and then the bacteria inside their body do all the digestion, and then they are able to absorb some of the nutrients through their bodies. But they can't do the digestion themselves. They have to rely on mutualistic bacteria in order for that to happen. But the most elaborate adaptations for herbivores are found in ruminants. So we're going to talk about that now. Ruminants are herbivores that have multiple different chambers for digestion. So like, for example, a cow. Any animal that chews its cud, you've probably heard of that before, is considered a ruminant. So as we talked about, mammals can't really digest cellulose at all, and so they require these bacteria to help them do that. And in many cases, the bacteria are sort of hanging out in different sections of their digestive tract, which allows them to break through the cellulose so that the animals can get some nutrients from it. But because cellulose takes so long to digest, and because it's so hard to digest, sometimes there has to be multiple chambers for this to take place. So in ruminants, the bacteria live in 2 of 4 stomachs that cows have, or that ruminants have. They live in the rumen and the reticulum. So these are the names of the 2 stomachs where the bacteria live. And here's the rumen here. And here's the reticulum right here. So you can see that the cow is consuming food. Okay, this is where it's ingesting the food. The food goes down the esophagus and it goes into the rumen. There's bacteria in the rumen that are helping it digest the cellulose. And then, after it's spent some time in the rumen, it moves into the reticulum. And the reticulum also has bacteria that help it digest. And then the next thing it does is the food, now that some of the cellulose has been digested, the food comes back up into the esophagus gets moved into the mouth of the cow or the ruminant, and the cow or the ruminant chews the food additionally, okay? So it does additional mechanical digestion. And after that, the food will go back down the esophagus for the third time, and then it will move straight into the omasum, which is the third stomach, and the abomasum, which is the fourth stomach. Once it has now passed through all four stomachs and it has been chewed twice, now it can move into the intestine and can be eliminated. Remember that in the intestine, that's where the nutrients get absorbed. So there's been multiple chemical digestion of the cellulose through the two stomachs, the rumen and the reticulum, where the bacteria are helping chemical digestion occur. There's mechanical digestion right after the cow ingests the food, and then it's mechanically digested again after it passes through the rumen and reticulum. And then some more chemical digestion can occur in the omasum and the abomasum, which are the third and the fourth stomachs, until finally absorption occurs in the intestines. So that's just a picture of it up close again. You can see the pathway a little bit better. Okay, so that is the end of the digestion lecture. If you guys have any questions, please let me know during our next meeting, which will be Wednesday.